DW Inside Europe.
Hello and welcome. I'm KRAKOW in Germany. Over 4 million people have now fled the fighting in Ukraine, the majority of them women and children. Across the continent, there's been an outpouring of solidarity, with many thousands of people rushing to offer help, support and shelter to the refugees. The vast majority of these offers are heartfelt and genuine. However, the United Nations is now warning of the heightened risks of human trafficking and exploitation amidst the rapid mass displacement. In order to avoid what it calls a recipe for disaster, the UN is calling on law enforcement and volunteers alike to be extra vigilant. Natalie Carney has been following the story.
The Medyka border crossing between Ukraine and Poland sees tens of thousands of people pass through here each day. Most are mothers, grandmothers, sisters and daughters, as men capable of fighting must stay in Ukraine. New arrivals are welcomed by trustworthy Polish and international volunteers. However, there are those lurking with bad intentions. Rebecca Goncalves is a volunteer from Poland and remembers the talk circulating a couple of weeks ago.
We had the news about a girl, Ukrainian girl, 19 years old, that was raped by a Poland man. He invited her to be host in his house and help her through this chaotic situation, and unfortunately it happened.
The Polish police and army are keeping a watchful eye, but with thousands of people here at any given time, day or night, it's nearly impossible to check everyone. Some 200 kilometers from Medyka, in the Polish city of Lublin, the human rights group Homo Faber has been actively engaged in campaigns that warn women of the very real threat of human traffickers. Human traffickers are always the first on the scene of any conflict, says Anna Dabrowska, who runs Homo Faber.
Over the past few days, there have been reports of men who are hanging around at bus stations or railway stations. They flush out the most beautiful girls and offer them a super lucrative job, often with accommodation in some very pleasant place. All you have to do is get into the car with them.
With millions scrambling for a place to stay once in Poland, it's not uncommon to see men walking through the loitering crowds, holding up signs of free transportation and accommodation. Despite knowing nothing of these individuals, it could prove a potentially attractive offer to those in a foreign country with little more than their children. Signs have been hung around heavily populated refugee areas and across all social media platforms, warning women of the potential risks. At Krakow's main train station, I found Olena and her 16-year-old daughter Anastasia. They had fled the Ukrainian capital Kiev and are en route to a friend in Italy. Anastasia admits she's heard a lot of stories about trafficking and that the fear of it had crossed her mind. Of course you are scared, she tells me, especially when you don't know where and why you were going. Her mother Olena says that's why everyone must only trust official volunteers, not just any stranger. But the traffickers are not only operating in Poland. Since many of the refugees move on to other EU countries, awareness campaigns can be found across the continent. Germany's federal police tweeted in both Ukrainian and Russian not to accept offers of overnight stays and urged people to report anything suspicious. More than 300,000 Ukrainians have found temporary shelter in Germany, but are all still very vulnerable, says Sofia Wersching, the executive director of KRAKOW, a German NGO engaged against the trafficking of human beings.
In foreign countries, refugees in general, one could say, they lack knowledge of language, they do not know about their rights, and they urgently need to find sources of income. There is a lot of focus on sexual exploitation, but we need to look at the labor exploitation much more intensely at the moment. They will need jobs and they will be ready to take offers where they accept labor conditions that non-refugees without these emergency situations would not accept. This is like a real threat.
Furthermore, Ukrainians don't need a visa for the EU, so they don't have to register with any authority, which could make them more exposed to exploitation, says Sofia.
You have a real challenge, which is that the refugees, they don't need to file a case for asylum, which is a benefit, of course, and very useful. But at the same time, it might be hard to reach the vulnerable people that need to be informed, because a lot of private offers are also made. And once people live in private facilities, trafficking or exploitation is much more harder to detect.
Back in Poland, Anna from Homo Faber explains that many of those fleeing war have had traumatic experiences. Therefore, it can be difficult for them to look after themselves. We need to continue to help them, she pleads. More than 4 million Ukrainians have managed to escape the threats inside their country, but more could potentially await them once they leave. Natalie Carney, DW, Poland and Germany.